The life of Madara Uchiha. From Naruto. Madara Uchiha was the legendary leader of the Uchiha clan. He founded Konohagakure alongside his childhood friend and rival Hashirama Senju, with the intention of bringing about an era of peace. When the two couldn't agree on how to achieve that peace, they fought for control of the village, a conflict which ended in Madara's death. However, Madara rewrote his death and went into hiding to work on his own plans. Unable to complete this in his natural life, he entrusted his knowledge and plans to Obito Uchiha shortly before his actual death. Years later, Madara would be revived, only to see his plans ultimately foiled. Finally, realizing the error of his ways, he made amends with Hashirama before his final death. Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Early life. Madara was born during the Warring States period, and was the eldest of Tajima Uchiha's 5 children. Madara and his siblings grew up on the battlefield, waging constant war with the Uchiha's rivals, the Senju. 3 of his siblings died young, leaving Madara with only his younger brother Izuna. Madara and Izuna became very close through their shared loss, and constantly competed with each other to become stronger. This, combined with his naturally strong chakra, enabled the young Madara to defeat adult Senju in battle and develop a reputation as a genius. During his infrequent downtime, Madara met a boy his own age named Hashirama. The two quickly developed a friendly rivalry, be it skipping stones or urinating in rivers. Like Madara, Hashirama was also a shinobi who had lost his brothers on the battlefield. Together, they imagined a world where children like themselves wouldn't need to fight. As a precaution, Madara and Hashirama did not divulge their family names, but nevertheless discovered each other's identities. Madara was an Uchiha, Hashirama was a Senju. It was their duty to kill each other, even if they were friends. Needing to choose between his family and his dreams of peace, Madara chose to end his friendship with Hashirama so he would have no reservations over killing him in the future, a resolve strong enough to awaken his Sharingan. Over the following years, Madara and Hashirama continued to meet in combat. Madara could never defeat Hashirama, even after acquiring a Mangekyo Sharingan, and Hashirama could never bring himself to kill someone he still considered a friend, resulting in a constant stalemate between the two that lasted decades. In time, both Madara and Hashirama became leaders of their respective clans, a position Hashirama tried to use to broker peace between them. Although some Uchiha found the offer increasingly tempting, Madara refused due to Izuna's death at the hands of Hashirama's own brother, Tobirama. Despite this, some Uchiha defected over to the Senju clan out of self-preservation. Madara then used Izuna's eyes in order to gain eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and restore his deteriorating vision. With this new power, he waged one final assault against the Senju and was summarily defeated. Rather than kill Madara to bring the era of war to an end, Hashirama offered to kill himself if it would stop the fighting. Madara was moved by Hashirama's gesture and finally assented to peace. The Senju, the Uchiha, and all their affiliated clans came together to found a village of peace, where children would never need to die in battle. Madara and Hashirama rekindled their childhood friendship, and Madara named that village Konohagakure, seeing it through the leaves. But Madara's idea of peace differed from Hashirama's. Where Hashirama envisioned cooperation with the other newly formed villages, Madara desired control so the peace could never be lost, evidenced by his attacking Iwagakure's Mu and Onoki so they would submit to Konoha's authority. When Hashirama was elected as Hokage, Konoha's leader, Madara also became concerned for the Uchiha's future, believing this to be but the first step in the Senju's dominance. The stone tablet Zetsu altered had been in the Uchiha's possession for generations and was brought with them when they settled in Konoha. Through careful study, Madara was able to decipher enough of it to learn the history of shinobi, of the endless cycle of failed peace and the destiny of battle between Uchiha and Senju, but also a means of unity for the world. With this knowledge, Madara decided Konoha was a failed experiment. He tried to convince his own clan and even Hashirama of the same conclusion, but none would hear him. Madara chose to abandon the village, attacking Konoha on multiple occasions, later returning with the nine-tailed demon fox under his control to challenge Hashirama. They fought to exhaustion, and from the carnage of their battle, the Valley of the End was formed. In the end, Madara was killed by Hashirama. News of Madara's death spread fast, and his corpse was secretly hidden to keep anyone from finding it and profiting from it. But Madara had planned ahead. He had scheduled an Izanagi to activate sometime after his death, changing reality to bring him back to life in exchange for his right eye's vision. Meanwhile, Black Zetsu had spent an unspecified length of time hiding itself inside of Madara's body, allowing it to later deceive Madara into thinking he created it. After being revived, he left a copy in place of his real body and went into hiding with a special trophy from his fight with Hashirama, a mouthful of Hashirama's flesh that he transplanted into his wounds. It was not until decades later, towards the end of Madara's natural life, that the cells had any effect, awakening the Rinnegan, in the process restoring his right eye. With the Rinnegan, he was able to summon the demonic statue of the Outer Path, which he used to cultivate a mindless living clone of Hashirama, from which he believed he had produced a White Zetsu army. Over the years, Madara had perfected his plans for peace in what he called the Eye of the Moon plan. But as his years waned, Madara knew he couldn't complete his plans in the time he had left. So, he transplanted his Rinnegan into a young Nagato without the boy's knowledge, intending Nagato to someday use the eyes to restore Madara to life. If Nagato was to do this, however, Madara would need an agent to act on his behalf and guide Nagato towards this ultimate goal. Madara waited, connecting himself to the demonic statue to keep him alive until someone could be found. Madara spent this time keeping a close eye on Konoha to find a suitable pawn to take his place. During the Third Shinobi World War, Madara found a badly injured Obito. Madara used Hashirama's cells to replace Obito's damaged extremities, and placed a forbidden individual curse tag in Obito's heart as a failsafe in case Obito ever turned against him. Until then, Madara began working towards corrupting Obito. He had Kirigakure kidnap the girl Obito loved, Rin Nohara, and seal the Three Tails into her. He then manipulated events so that Rin would die at the hands of Obito's friend, Kakashi Hatake, while Obito watched. Driven to despair, Obito offered his services to Madara. Madara divulged to Obito the history of the Sage of Six Paths and the Ten Tails, the details of his Eye of the Moon plan, and various techniques that Obito would need moving forward. As a final act, he left behind Black Zetsu, what he believed to be a manifestation of his will, to provide additional guidance to Obito in pursuit of this goal. With that, Madara disconnected from the demonic statue and, with his dying breath, entrusted Obito with his name, Madara Uchiha. Fourth Shinobi World War. Countdown. Tobi, acting under Madara's name, moves into the final stages of the Eye of the Moon plan by initiating a Fourth Shinobi World War. Before the wars start, Kabuto Yakushi approaches Tobi to try and form an alliance. When Tobi asks what will happen if he refuses, Kabuto resurrects Madara to show he knows that Tobi is not the true Madara, and forces him to accept. Tobi reluctantly agrees, and Kabuto de-summons Madara. Fourth Shinobi World War. Climax. During the Fourth Shinobi World War, Kabuto decides to use Madara against the allied shinobi forces, and uses Mu as a medium to summon him to the battlefield. When he first becomes aware of his surroundings, Madara believes he has been brought back by Nagato's Outer Path, Samsara of Heavenly Life technique, but soon realizes that he instead has been brought back with the Impure World reincarnation. Kabuto speaks through Mu, introduces himself, and explains recent developments in the world and Tobi's current actions. After Kabuto points out that he has restored Madara to a state beyond his prime, Madara tests his body by tearing through the 4th Division, thinning its numbers. The 4th Division's initial attempts to stop Madara fail as he protects himself with Susanoo. When the 5th Kazekage, 3rd Tsuchikage, and one of Naruto Uzumaki's shadow clones combine efforts, Madara is forced to activate his Rinnegan and absorb the attack. Realizing his enemies were too dangerous for him to hold back and only use basic ninjutsu and taijutsu, Madara pulls down a meteorite from the atmosphere. When the Kazekage and Tsuchikage successfully stop it, Madara adds a second meteorite to his attack, both of which fall upon and devastate the 4th Division. With most of the 4th Division dead, Madara questions Kabuto about just how far off plan Tobi has gone. Because Kabuto doesn't actually know much about the plan, Madara is left to check things for himself and tries to summon the Nine Tails, only to discover it's sealed in a Jinchuriki, specifically Naruto. Despite knowing the current Naruto was a clone, he decided to delay his plans to test out his new powers, namely the would-release nativity of trees, which Naruto's clone barely countered. He then moves in to finish off the remainder of the 4th division, but is repelled by the arrival of the 5th Hokage, the 5th Mizukage, and the 4th Raikage. The 5 Kage combine forces against Madara and propel him from the immediate area. By the time he returns, Naruto's shadow clone is gone, and the 5 Kage remain his only opponents. They battle for some time, with Madara equaling and besting the Kage's efforts. When he's hit with the Tsuchikage's dust release, detachment of the primitive world technique, Madara's armor is torn away, revealing the implant of Hashirama's face on his chest. Madara laments Hashirama's legacy that these Kage have inherited, having been completely unimpressed by their attacks, particularly those of the Hokage, Hashirama's granddaughter. Madara then creates 25 copies of himself and has them each activate their Susanoo. By nightfall, the Kage are still alive and are able to pool their efforts so successfully that he is nearly sealed. Finally impressed by their display, Madara responds by summoning his perfected Susanoo. Before he can use it to kill the Kage, his Susanoo starts to fade and Madara is engulfed in light. Madara realizes that Kabuto has elsewhere released him from the impure world reincarnation, and his soul is returning to the afterlife. Madara responds by performing the hand seals to rescind the impure world reincarnation contract that Kabuto has over him, enabling him to return to his immortal body without further interference from a summoner. Now able to do whatever he likes and bored with the Kage, Madara decides to go find Naruto and reclaim the Nine Tails. The Kage try to block his escape. After defeating the 5 Kage, Madara finds and reunites with Obito while he's engaged in combat with Naruto, Killer Bee, Kakashi Hatake, and Might Guy. Madara notices the demonic statue undergoing a premature transformation into the Ten Tails, and scolds Obito for being too hasty. After Obito returns Madara's gunbai, Madara creates a wood dragon in an attempt to capture Naruto and Killer Bee to complete the Ten Tails. He, at one point, manages to restrain and drain Bee of his energy, but is overwhelmed by Guy's daytime tiger. The Ten Tails is revived before he can recover, forcing Madara to make do. He and Obito leap onto the Ten Tails' head and connect themselves to it, granting them control over its actions. Their 4 opponents put up resistance, but are no match for the Ten Tails' power. Before the Ten Tails can finish them off, however, the combined allied shinobi forces arrive to join the fight, with Ino managing to control Obito into redirecting the Ten Tails' attack. The allies are able to immobilize the Ten Tails, making it an easy target. The Ten Tails undergoes a new transformation before their attacks can connect, freeing it and letting it block the incoming attacks. Though the immediate problem is solved, Madara realizes there's another issue. The allies are being coordinated too effectively. He and Obito direct the Ten Tails to attack the distant allied HQ, something that takes several tailed beast balls due to their lack of control, which Madara attributes to Obito's failure to revive him correctly. Although the Alliance's brain is killed, the allies are given one final battle plan in the time it takes the Ten Tails to hit its target. Obito and Madara try to thin the allies' numbers before they can get into position, and when that fails, block against the oncoming attack, but the combined forces manage to break through and separate Obito and Madara from the Ten Tails. With the Ten Tails now out of their control, they must fight the Alliance directly. Obito eventually disappears to the other dimension, forcing Madara to fend for himself. During Obito's absence, Madara senses that Hashirama has elsewhere been brought back to life. Excited at the prospect of fighting his rival again, Madara eagerly awaits his arrival. When he arrives, Hashirama sends only a wood clone to face him, being too busy restraining the Ten Tails. Madara decides to sit out the fight until the real Hashirama is ready. When the wood clone persists, Madara easily defeats it. Madara later senses Obito's return to the battlefield and decides to make use of one of his failsafes, activating black receivers planted in Obito to force him to finally revive Madara. Obito resists and instead seals the Ten Tails into himself. Birth of the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Though he's frustrated by this setback, Hashirama is no longer preoccupied, so Madara forces him into a fight for 2 reasons: his simple desire to fight his rival once again, and he also plans to oppose Obito and take his place as the caster of the infinite Tsukiyomi. To accomplish the latter, however, Madara needs Senjutsu Chakra, which Hashirama has. As their battle rages, Hashirama tries to convince Madara to postpone, but Madara repeatedly refuses. Nevertheless, he keeps track of Obito's progress and growing control of the Ten Tails' power. After Obito's defeat, Madara is restrained by Hashirama's wood dragons and the Alliance moves in to seal him. With Obito no longer the Ten Tails' Jinchuriki, Madara puts another failsafe into effect, Black Zetsu. Having been in contact with it since his initial reincarnation, Madara orders Black Zetsu to take control of Obito's body and use the Outer Path Samsara of Heavenly Life technique. Restored to life, Madara is able to regain his past strength, to which he breaks free of his restraints. Having died with his real eyes intact and removed from his body, Madara's reincarnated eyes crumble to nothing. Sasuke attempts to burn Madara with Amaterasu, while Naruto reminds Sasuke that Madara can absorb ninjutsu. Madara, however, had to discard his armor that was burnt by the flames. To compensate for his blindness, he immobilizes Hashirama with black receivers and absorbs his Senjutsu chakra, enhancing his sensory skills enough to perceive his enemies and their attacks without the need for sight. He is once again attacked by Sasuke, but instructs Sasuke to stay out of his way since he does not want to kill his own clansmen. Madara goes after the freed-tailed beasts so that he can revive the Ten Tails once more. He attempts to take on all 9 at once, failing and losing his right arm in the process. While he regroups, a white Zetsu clone brings him one of his Rinnegan that Obito kept in storage. Madara takes this and one of the Zetsu's arms, allowing him to start round 2. He summons the demonic statue from Obito's body and uses Limbo Border Jail to repel the 9 beasts. Before they can recover, he seals all of them into the demonic statue, including those sealed in Naruto and Bee. While the statue undergoes its transformation into the Ten Tails again, Madara asks the Zetsu clone how Black Zetsu is faring with taking his remaining Rinnegan back from Obito. Tobirama Senju, having been reincarnated alongside Hashirama, attacks Madara immediately afterwards, but is restrained after failing to deal any damage. Sasuke also attacks Madara but is immobilized in midair. Having already warned Sasuke once, Madara turns Sasuke's own sword against him and stabs him in the chest. With nobody left to oppose him, Madara seals the Ten Tails into himself once its resurrection is complete. Pleased with himself, Madara sets off to regain his other Rinnegan. Along the way, he spits out the Benihisago and Kohaku no Johei, Obito having used both as a part of his premature revival method. When he arrives at Black Zetsu's location, he discovers that Obito has regained control of his body. Madara tries to reason with Obito, reminding him of all they planned and insisting on the impending effectiveness of the Eye of the Moon plan. Rather than be convinced, Obito stabs Madara and manages to steal fragments of the One Tails and Eight Tails chakra. He then uses Kamui to escape with Naruto. While Madara contemplates his next move, he's confronted by Might Guy, a master of taijutsu, which is one of the only effective attacks against Madara in his new form. Guy opens all 8 gates and hits Madara with the Evening Elephant. Madara is taken by surprise and tries to defend himself, but other allied shinobi are able to reduce him to a single truth-seeking ball, leaving him wide open. Madara is thrilled at the prospect of such a challenging fight, and visibly battered but not beaten, forces Guy to use Night Guy. Madara is nearly killed by this attack, which obliterates the entire left side of his body. Thanking Guy for giving him such an entertaining battle and acknowledging him as a worthy opponent, Madara decides to show him the ultimate respect by killing him instead of letting him succumb to his injuries. However, the truth-seeking ball that Madara launches at Guy is kicked back at him by a revived Naruto, whom Madara notes has somehow gained power similar to his own. Naruto sends Madara crashing through the recreation of the Ten Tails in its giant tree form, a remnant of Obito's earlier battle. A voice speaks to Madara, telling him to absorb it. Madara does so and becomes stronger, but is met with a new problem. Sasuke, also healed from his injuries, has joined forces with Naruto, and is also in possession of new abilities. Despite Madara's efforts, he can do nothing against them. Knowing he needs his other Rinnegan if he's to end this fight, Madara steals Kakashi Hatake's Mangekyo Sharingan and uses it to go after Obito. He stops Sakura Haruno from destroying the Rinnegan, to which Obito responds by sending her back to the real world before Madara can kill her. However, Obito himself is too weak to fight back. To give Obito some final words, Madara first congratulates him for removing the forbidden individual curse tag he had placed. He also reveals his role in the death of Rin Nohara, in doing so admitting that he's been manipulating Obito from the start. With that, Madara takes back his Rinnegan, returning to Obito his left Mangekyo Sharingan. Black Zetsu uses Obito's body to perform Kamui and return them to the real world. Naruto and Sasuke move to attack him as soon as Madara appears, so Madara delays them with multiple Chibaku Tensei. Madara gains proximity to the moon, awakening the Rinne Sharingan in the process, and succeeds in casting the Infinite Tsukiyomi. Kaguya Otsutsuki strikes. The entire world is trapped in a dream, and then wrapped into Madara's god nativity of a world of trees. Sasuke is able to save Naruto, Kakashi, and Sakura from the Infinite Tsukiyomi. Seeing them, Madara announces himself the world's savior, one who has saved the world from itself by replacing the hells of reality with the heavens of dreams. While he is proclaiming his victory, Black Zetsu stabs him in the back. Black Zetsu reveals that it is not Madara's will, but instead Kaguya Otsutsuki's, and that he has taken advantage of him in order to bring about her revival. Black Zetsu transfers from Obito's body into Madara's, completely covering him and forcing him to start absorbing the chakra of those trapped in the Infinite Tsukiyomi. After dramatically increasing in size, Madara shrinks down until a revived Kaguya is revealed in his stead. Naruto and Sasuke eventually seal Kaguya in her own dimension, along with Black Zetsu, at which point she reverts into the Ten Tails and spits out Madara. The Sage of Six Paths summons Madara and everyone else back to the real world, but he can do nothing to save Madara from his approaching death as a result of having both the tailed beasts and demonic statue removed from his body. Madara uses his remaining time speaking to Hashirama, noting that his own dream for peace has died, while Hashirama's lives on, and therefore was apparently the better of the two. Hashirama replies that they are still friends despite everything, to which Madara agrees as he dies. Legacy. After his second death, Madara's greatest lasting influence was in Obito's actions, who used Madara's knowledge to create Akatsuki. Several years later, when Obito began operating under Madara's name, the mere possibility that he was truly Madara was enough to unify the ninja of the 5 great shinobi countries and trigger the 4th Shinobi World War. Madara's actions during life, and even those subsequent actions of Obito, would end up having disastrous effects for the Uchiha clan. Following Madara's betrayal of Konoha, the Uchiha were entirely isolated from any form of control over Konoha's future, chiefly because of the actions of Tobirama Senju. His actions also played a role in Tobirama's growth, who believed that to be Hokage, one must balance between Hashirama's compassion and Madara's ruthlessness. At the time, some Uchiha members saw this as proof of what Madara always feared, but the fears subsided with time. Years later, when Obito causes the Nine-Tailed Demon Fox's attack, Konoha once again becomes suspicious of the Uchiha, and the Uchiha once again feel wronged. This time, however, their discontent does not subside. When the Uchiha begin planning to overthrow Konoha, the upper echelons of Konoha's government ordered the Uchiha clan downfall. One silver lining of Madara's legacy is the name of Konohagakure, which he himself came up with. Personality. Madara's childhood was a product of the times in which he lived. The constant fighting made him a perfectionist that would keep at something until he mastered it, and his triumphs on the battlefield made him very confident in his abilities and talent. Whenever one of these personality traits was challenged, as they tended to be by Hashirama, Madara's competitive streak would emerge. Madara did not mind Hashirama's influence in this regard. He believed that the only way to survive in the shinobi world was to make allies with one's enemies. His exposure to Hashirama is credited for Madara not experiencing the Uchiha's curse of hatred, or at the very least, not being victimized by it as much as Izuna was, and even though he claimed to have abandoned his friendship with Hashirama, Madara still held onto their friendship subconsciously. Madara's actions and beliefs were singularly focused on protecting Izuna, his only surviving brother. So long as he had Izuna, Madara was reasonable and kind, willing to make concessions for a perceived greater good. Madara changed after Izuna's death, becoming bitter towards the Senju, particularly Hashirama since he still had a brother. Embracing his clan's curse of hatred, he opted to die for revenge rather than compromise or forgive. Although he was briefly convinced to set aside his grief and try to replace Izuna with the collective family of Konoha, he could never shake the feeling that he was betraying Izuna's memory. The increasing isolation of himself and other Uchiha from village politics ultimately convinced him of this, causing him to fully break with any other attachments. During his time as a Konoha shinobi, Madara did what he thought was in the village's best interests. Unlike Hashirama's compassionate methods, Madara took a merciless approach. The shinobi of Iwagakure only had purpose so long as they swore unwavering allegiance to Konoha. Since their methods were so different, Madara hated to hear Hashirama's name during diplomatic discussions. After his defection from Konoha, Madara's priorities became centered entirely around the Eye of the Moon plan, manipulating countless others in order to satisfy his own goals, and putting in place multiple layers of contingencies so that nobody could ever diverge from his own intentions. Despite this, Madara genuinely believed the plan would, in fact, benefit the world and simply allowed an ends justified the means principle. As he valued only power and possessed so much of it, Madara therefore disliked to waste it on unworthy causes or unchallenging opponents. Madara loved fighting above all else. The sights, the sounds, even the taste of his own blood, occasionally describing his battles as dances. He felt being reincarnated deprived him of the full experience. Yet he was very disciplined in a fight, never allowing his failed plans or attacks to upset him, never letting superior numbers or power intimidate him, and always willing to do whatever must be done to gain victory. Although he sometimes imposed limitations on himself, such as not using certain techniques more than once, he was willing to lower himself with unbecoming tactics or excessive displays in order to change tactics and exploit advantages. He was perfectly aware of his talents and did not feign modesty, bluntly stating when he was stronger than his opponents and belittling them when they continued to defy him. Conversely, if he was proven wrong or somebody posed a legitimate challenge to him, he would admit it and apologize for previous remarks if necessary. In addition, if such an opponent is about to die, he would show them the ultimate respect by taking the time and effort to finish them off himself, even if said person was going to die on their own. Stemming from this, he feels insulted if he knows an opponent isn't using their full power against him, even if he knows it will result in their death. He also held the Senju to a higher standard in terms of power due to his encounters with Hashirama, stating a weak Senju disgusts him more than a weak shinobi of any kind. One of the exceptions Madara makes was Hashirama. Their years of rivalry left Madara with competing feelings of respect and resentment. Madara considered Hashirama the only opponent worthy of his time and would postpone his own plans if it meant prolonging his time to fight with Hashirama without issue. Despite this, Madara is quite open-minded about recognizing other strong individuals besides Hashirama, as when he declares Might Guy as the strongest taijutsu user he's ever faced. Despite his prowess and intellect, Madara is not without moments of recklessness. When he was brought back to life, he showed no hesitation in absorbing Hashirama's Senjutsu chakra while admitting he expected to have some difficulty controlling it due to having no prior training. In the later years of his developing the Eye of the Moon plan, Madara became pessimistic about human nature, believing the cycle of battle to be inescapable. He also came to believe that humanity and the world are incapable of changing from what they were in the past. He believed the current worthless reality was built too much on the idea of winning and losing. For this reason, he was deeply committed to his plan, so much so that he would prematurely end a fight he was enjoying or kill any threat, even his own clansmen, for the sake of success. Despite this, Madara was simply acting on what he believed would benefit humanity as a whole, showing his time in Konoha did indeed influence his actions, and he wasn't acting simply out of bloodlust after Izuna's death. His plan's ultimate failure made him see its errors, breaking free of his curse of hatred and admitting the superiority of Hashirama's methods for peace. He and Hashirama were thus able to reconcile their friendship in the moments just before death. Abilities. Madara was one of the most powerful shinobi in history, recognized as the strongest Uchiha ever produced even decades after his death. A child prodigy, he killed several adult Senju before he had awakened his Sharingan. He was the only one able to push Hashirama Senju, a god of shinobi, to his absolute limits. When Obito operated under Madara's name, fear of Madara's power forced the 5 great shinobi countries and the neutral land of Iron to band together. As it was noted, Madara's name itself was power. Madara was able to, respectively, single-handedly defeat the 5 Kage and the 9-tailed beasts. He was also confident he could overpower Obito, then the 10-tails Jinchuriki, something it took the combined allied shinobi forces to accomplish: chakra and physical prowess. Even by Uchiha standards, Madara was born with very powerful chakra, described as foul and evil. This is partly because he inherited Indra's chakra. His large chakra reserves allowed him to fight non-stop for 24 hours before collapsing, and in his old age summoned the demonic statue of the Outer Path from its cage in the moon. His chakra control could perform complicated techniques with a single hand seal. He could also quickly absorb and synchronize Senjutsu chakra with his own and enter Sage Mode, despite having no prior training in Senjutsu. Even when distributing his chakra among 25 wood clones, each still had enough power to threaten the 5 Kage. Madara was incredibly skilled in taijutsu. Against the 4th Division, he calmly defeated thousands of opponents with physical combat, showing exceptional agility, reflexes, and coordination to disarm, dodge, and counter attacks from many directions at once. He could strike with precision before his opponent could react, and he could overpower individuals twice his size. He was fast enough to attack Naruto, who was in Sage Mode. Body modifications. When Madara was reincarnated, Kabuto Yakashi modified him to be even greater than when he was alive. He was restored to his physical prime while also retaining the abilities he only had in old age. In addition, a pale replica of Hashirama's face existed on Madara's left pectoral region, which acted as a medium to channel Senjutsu chakra into Sage Mode. It also let him heal most of his injuries in seconds, and allows him the usage of wood release. For severe injuries he could not heal, like amputation, Madara could replace his limb with material from a white Zetsu's body. Stemming from having Hashirama's cells in his body, Madara's life force became powerful enough to not immediately die from having all the tailed beasts extracted from his body. Ninjutsu. Madara was well versed in a variety of ninjutsu styles. He could use Juinjutsu, powerful enough to restrict the target's actions, hide within surfaces to avoid damage and traverse the battlefield unnoticed, and through an unorthodox use of the Shadow Clone technique, fake his death by having a clone act as his corpse. In the anime, Madara showed the ability to levitate. Madara was an adept sensor, being able to detect others' chakra signature countries away, determine a person's clan and the nature of their Kekkei Genkai, and even differentiate species. When amplified by Sage Mode, he could even fight whilst blind by locating targets and dodging attacks through his sensory perception, even avoiding a flying Thunder God slash. Also, with Sage Mode, Madara's pain tolerance was high, as he neither flinched from Sasuke stabbing his right arm, the tailed beast's assault, nor from the loss of his arm. Bukijutsu. Madara could use many weapons, such as giant shuriken, a kama, chains with weights, a kusarigama, and handheld shuriken. He also demonstrated proficiency with swords while fighting the 4th Division. His trademark weapon was his gunbai, with which he could shield himself, redirect attacks, or wield it like a mace or a flail. He could slice through the giant roots of the Ten Tails tree form with it. Nature transformation. Madara was able to utilize all 5 basic nature transformations as well as yin-yang release. An Uchiha, he had a natural affinity for fire release, being able to produce massive flames that required several water release users together to repel. He could launch a volley of dragon-shaped fireballs, or even cover an area with ash as a smokescreen. In the anime, Madara could create powerful gusts with his gunbai to repel entire platoons. Later in his life, he used yin-yang release to amplify white Zetsu and pour his will into black receivers which could restrict and control targets. After transplanting Hashirama's DNA, which was later augmented further by Kabuto, Madara could use wood release, a mixture of water and earth-natured chakra, with his skill and power comparable to Hashirama himself. He could create gigantic flowering trees to render foes unconscious, wood clones, and wood dragons, which would bind targets and drain their chakra. With Hashirama's cells, Madara could also produce roots to connect to and gain limited control of the Ten Tails. After becoming the Ten Tails' Jinchuriki, he could use Yin release to create lightning bolts and storm release, a mixture of water and lightning-natured chakra to create energy beams that could cut through the 6 Paths rods. Sharingan. Madara awakened his Sharingan as a child, with one Tomoe in each of his eyes. By adulthood, his Sharingan was fully developed and active near constantly. Madara's mastery of the Sharingan surpassed every other member of the Uchiha clan in his natural lifetime. Only he could tell the difference between a shadow or wood clone and the original. With brief eye contact, Madara could place targets under Genjutsu and paralyze them or relay information. He could even trap the Ninetales and summon it as a powerful tool in battle. By programming one of his eyes to activate Izanagi after his death, he was able to alter reality and resurrect himself. Mangekyo Sharingan. Madara was the first Uchiha known to have awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Madara knew about the other users' Mangekyo techniques and was also able to discern the mechanics of these techniques with brief observation. The straight Tomoe or Choku Tomoe of his Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan granted him fluidity in his movements while fighting. Having awakened both his Mangekyo, Madara could use Susanoo, which he could use even without his eyes in their sockets. The ribcage could withstand an Ultra Big Ball Rasengan and A's strength. He could produce a legged humanoid Susanoo. His Susanoo wielded up to 4 undulating blades that could be thrown and controlled remotely. He could also fire Yasuka Magatama of various sizes. When fully produced, Madara would hover inside Susanoo to grant him a greater range of movement. With his eyesight deteriorating from overuse, he replaced his original eyes with Izuna's, restoring his vision and gaining the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. With it, he could stabilize Susanoo into its complete body form, causing it to resemble a Tengu with outer armor that was nearly impenetrable. A secondary pair of arms wielded sheathed katana, which could be used to bisect mountains with their mere shockwaves. According to himself, its power was comparable to that of the tailed beasts, and no one was said to have lived to see it a second time. Madara's complete body Susanoo uses its secondary set of arms for attack and defense rather than flight. He was also able to shape his Susanoo into armor for Kurama, which synergized their abilities. After absorbing the God Tree into himself and stealing Kakashi Hatake's Mangekyo Sharingan, he was able to use Kamui on himself immediately to reach Obito and retrieve his Rinnegan still with him. Though brief, Madara's use of the eye was notable on account of being able to use Kamui while being the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, something Obito himself could not do. Rinnegan. Years after infusing himself with Hashirama's DNA and unknowingly mixing Indra's and Ashura's chakra, Madara's Sharingan evolved into the Rinnegan. As the eye's original owner, only he could use them to their maximum power. He was able to switch between both dojutsu. With the Rinnegan, Madara could use all of the abilities of the Six Paths technique, such as the Preta Path to absorb chakra and the Diva Path to perform Chibaku Tensei. He could also use the Outer Path to create chakra chains that could restrain all 9-tailed beasts, and black receivers for various melee and supplementary purposes. Through the usage of his Rinnegan with that of his Sharingan, Madara could summon meteorites to cause widespread destruction. While under the Impure World reincarnation, Madara was unable to use the full extent of his Rinnegan's abilities. After being revived and obtaining one of his actual eyes, he could summon and control the demonic statue of the Outer Path, seal the Ten Tails inside of himself, and generate a corporeal invisible shadow to aid him in battle. While Madara was in Sage Mode and further boosted by Kurama's chakra, this shadow was powerful enough to knock down the tailed beasts. With access to both of his Rinnegan, Madara could produce at least 4 shadows to aid him. Rinne Sharingan. As the Ten Tails' Jinchuriki, and with both of his Rinnegan, Madara approached the moon and awakened a Rinne Sharingan on his forehead, which he could use to reflect the eye onto the moon, allowing him to cast the Infinite Tsukiyomi and trap everyone, aside from himself, in an infinite genjutsu. Jinchuriki transformations. After sealing the Ten Tails into his body, Madara had immediately gained complete control over the beast, which was stronger than when it was first received due to having all of the 8 tails and half of the 9 tails' chakra sealed into it, leading to his power being noted to feel stronger than Obito's, which only had a portion of the 8 and 9 tails' chakra. As such, only shinobi using all of the 8 gates or the 6 paths chakra are able to compete with him. In this form, Madara could fly, and his physical abilities were enhanced, being fast enough to react to the Flying Thunder God technique and Kamui, and durable enough to survive the Night Guy. After absorbing the tree form of the Ten Tails, his regenerative powers could circumvent bisection and restore his body, causing him to declare himself immortal. He could also harness natural energy to enhance his various techniques, as well as cast the Infinite Tsukiyomi and God, Nativity of a World of Trees, after he awakened the Rinne Sharingan. With his transformation, Madara obtained truth-seeking balls that floated behind him in a circular formation, which were comprised of the 5 basic nature transformations and yin-yang release. Their chakra is highly malleable and versatile, such that he could use them as high-speed projectiles, protective barriers, and various weapons, such as a shakujo. With yin-yang release, the balls could nullify all ninjutsu they came into contact with. Intelligence. Madara's years of experience on the battlefield honed his strategic ingenuity. He could quickly devise a number of approaches and could switch approaches immediately. The longer he spent against a particular opponent, the less he needed backup tactics, as he could eventually predict what they would do and identify literal or psychological weaknesses to exploit. He could form and verify any theories he came up with using small details. In addition to his sheer adaptability, Madara was knowledgeable on a large variety of individuals and abilities, and thus could identify techniques when used and react with the most appropriate counter. Likewise, Madara was an excellent teacher, having single-handedly trained the young Obito into a powerful shinobi comparable to himself. A researcher, he experimented on and cultivated a clone flower through the demonic statue of the Outer Path, and from it, he created a life support system for himself. He had enough medical knowledge to transplant eyes, treat severe injuries, and could replace destroyed body parts with white Zetsu matter. And that, my friends, is the life of Madara Uchiha. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.